Have you ever had so many things that you want to do all at the same time and with equal levels of interest and passion that you just get wildly overwhelmed and end up doing nothing at all? Nah, I've never experienced that. She's lying. I gave myself all of this lovely extra time so that I could work on my very long list of projects slowly and carefully and without looming deadlines. Huzzah, I'm so excited. Genuinely, I didn't mean for that to sound sarcastic. I'm just lightly, very, very lightly having trouble deciding which one to start with. From the hundreds of ideas on my master list, I've narrowed it down to about 30 that I want to do next. Y'all, 30 projects is over 7 months of videos. And that's assuming that I don't, get some new random idea that I throw in there. This mug is frickin' enormous and I'm so happy with it. From the list of 30, I've narrowed it down to about 10 projects that I would like to do next. Soon next, first next. Right now, all at once if it were possible. Yeah. So I'm gonna write 10 ideas on slips of paper, because that's more fun than just putting them in a digital randomizer, and draw one out of a hat to decide what project we're starting with. Let the randomness decide for me. Hair. And no, I'm not gonna tell you what I wrote down here. They will all eventually end up on the channel, Lord willing and the creek don't rise, and I want them to be a surprise. So you will only get to learn one of these today, whichever one I draw out of the hat. Finishing the hat or the apple container? Okay, cross your fingers. Or don't. There's no bad choice here. There is just choice. We have a winner. I dropped the winner. Okay, smocking. I have been wanting to explore smocking, to explore the different kinds. I actually already bought a book that has information on the topic. Yeah, let's go do that. And I'm just gonna leave all these in here and we might be drawing out of here again soon. What is smocking? Don't ask me. If I knew, I wouldn't be doing an exploration of it. Smocking is this, and this, and this, and this. Editing me hates it when I do that. I looked up smocking on the interwebs a couple months ago and found the results very confusing, because not only are there multiple types or styles of smocking, but then there's also all these variations that can be done within those types, and then stuff starts to all kind of look like each other and people don't all agree on what exactly is what and what terminology. You know how the internet is nowadays. Which is why I bought the book, because it is much more clear and straightforward, and honestly, I'd rather just take one person's experienced opinion than be blasted with the horde. So for this exploration, I am just going to be depending upon the information provided by Ms. Colette Wolfe. Very cool book, by the way, highly recommend. It's not just smocking in here, it's everything. Everything you could possibly think of. Let's grab some fabric for all of the samples. I'm hoping that I can use basically scraps to do all of the testing and all of the samples. I don't think I need that big of a piece of fabric. And I would like to test out some very different fabrics eventually. I think it would be best to start with a fairly sturdy woven material, but it would be cool to eventually try some very different materials and see how smocking looks on those. Oh, you know what? Now that I came in here, I actually think this yellow stuff that I just made my, that I recently made my randomly selected dress out of would be pretty good. This is like a nice solid woven. Let me dig it out of here. Okay, we've got several fabrics of varying thicknesses and weights and types all woven because I don't think smocking is really something you want to be doing on knit. I don't know though, maybe I'll try it. First one up in the book is English smocking. Hi, Bubby. So grab your crumpets and tea. Alrighty. Pay no attention to the massive bush growing on our table. I just trimmed some of our hedges back there and then I was like, I can't throw these out. They're so pretty. I'll just make a little arrangement. And then somebody on Instagram said it's a California Christmas tree. Yeah, English smocking. So the first thing, or the first step of smocking is creating the pleats. Then the second step is attaching those pleats with the decorative stitching. So we just need a grid of dots. There's also pleating machines that you can do. Not even really machines, but just little like hand pleaters. I will probably get one of those someday because I find them very cool, but today is not that day. These things have a lot more smell than you would expect just a green plant to have. This is gonna take me a hot second. I think I'm gonna go ahead and grid 2 pieces because they show 2 different options for how to do the stitching across for either like a bunch of small pleats or fewer larger pleats. So we'll start out by trying both of those. Once we've got the grid marked on the fabric, we take a sturdy thread, this is quilting thread, and run gathering stitches according to those dots. That secures the pleats, so then we can place the decorative stitching on top before releasing them again. Okay, so that's a bit of a faff, isn't it? I can see why people like the little cranky, rolly machine thing for the pleating. I ended up doing a third example with the same pleating style as the yellow, just in at one dot, out at the next dot, but with only ½ inch in between each dot, because I wanted to see how that would compare to this one, which is in and out at each dot. And I'm not really sure how it compares. I think this one is just a little more like soft of accordion, if that makes sense. I don't really know how else to describe it. And this one is a little more sharp or compact of pleats. Now we do the embroidery, which means I need embroidery floss. That would have been helpful. Forgot about that. Let's get some. Hi, pretty puppy. Do you need to go pee-pee? Y'all, our little mandarin tree, Satsuma mandarins, I believe they are. It's just so cute and it's doing so well and it makes me so happy. We only planted it in July, I think. I mean, obviously, like, it was already decently tall when we bought it. And it's really covered in fruit and they're all ripening right now, so I'm kind of just picking one every week. I picked one yesterday and it was good, but it's not like as flavorful as it should be fully ripe. So I'm just gonna keep picking one every week until I know they're actually ripe and really flavorful. But oh my God, I love having fruit in my backyard. I was fascinated with the concept of picking fruit off of trees and being able to eat it when I was a kid because it just wasn't something that we experienced much. And now I finally have that for the first time, even though it's just a little small tree. Like, aren't fruit trees amazing? They can be so small and still produce fruit. Not just 1 or 2 fruits either, like that's producing a lot of fruit. I have dreams of so many more. I will turn this normal house in a normal neighborhood into a freaking orchard if it's the last thing I do. Anyway, we're embroidering. I basically just want to test out every single stitch that they share here. These are all normal embroidery stitches that by name I already know, but judging from her illustrations, they just look slightly different because of how you're passing them through the pleats. I will say the downside of this book is that it's all black and white, and I am realizing now that my brain definitely has a thing where it's like, I'd understand that better in color, and I'm not sure why that is, but it just is. Over 2, under 1, is that what I'm seeing right here? Okay. I'm also trying to keep all of these kind of neat because I can't help being like, oh my god, that's a lot of thread and I want to reuse them. She does say that this English smocking is the one that's supposed to give you like elasticity, kind of like shirring would, which I can't really grasp how that works, but I'm just gonna trust that that is true. I think I will grasp it once I see it. You're not having fun unless you're glaring at your thing. But like, how is that stretchy? That just put it super tight together. I think this is a trust the process thing. We're trusting, we're moving on. It's hard to keep a straight line. That is what I'm observing, at least. Like, this one's not too bad, I don't think. This one feels a little crooked. I don't know how tight I'm supposed to be pulling these, which, quite frankly, the answer might be in the book, and I just didn't read it because I'm bad at reading instructions. My line definitely went crooked that time. You can see it go blonk. But that's okay, we're just practicing. I want to try honeycomb smocking next. Yeah, I think I'll do regular honeycomb on the top half and then surface honeycomb on the bottom half, and then move on to the others. Wish me luck. It's a little clunky or unwieldy to hold onto this fabric and sew on the thick pleats, but my biggest issue was getting straight lines. I ended up just marking a line with a pin so that I'd have a guide, and even then, it was a bit wobbly at times. I also just removed the center cable stitches so I could honeycomb the whole thing, because it felt like I could use the practice. As predicted, once I pulled out all the gathering stitches, my noggin finally grasped how the stretchy effect works. Ooh. This looks so cool, but I'm a little confused by the way it wants to pull inward and curl forward when stretched. I kind of thought it would curve backwards away from the stitches, although physics have now come knocking and I'm lightly getting it. Is that even physics? I don't know, y'all. After some general inspection, I also removed the outline stitches at the top and the bottom, which allowed it to stretch out a little more evenly, I suppose. But yeah, I think the weirdness of the stretching might have to do with where I tied off the ends. Like, maybe it shouldn't be on the top of a pleat like this. Also, maybe it just acts a bit weird because it's a small swatch, or because the pleats are so deep. Good thing we're about to do a whole bunch more. The honeycomb effect is really cool though. Woke up the next morning with a headache. Have you been drinking enough water? Is that water you're drinking now? Well, what better time to curl up on the couch, cuddle the puppy, he just had a bath, and do some smocking. right, thoughts on English smocking. The shorter pleats, smaller pleats, are definitely way easier to hold on to while sewing. And then of course the whole thing would be easier if you don't have all of your threads hanging off the end. Like, I really just couldn't stand to waste all of this by cutting it off shorter. But it would be way easier to tie off the ends like the book says to, and cut them off so that one, your pleats stay nicely together and aren't like extending on one side, and also two, you don't have a bunch of threads going everywhere. But yeah, the 1 inch high, thick, whatever you want to call it, I don't know what you would do with this. It's too thick. It looks really cool. This is much more what you would expect to see on a garment. I did go and steam all of these really hard. I pinned them down on my ironing board a little bit stretched out and then hit them with a bunch of steam. So that's been helping with them just laying flat and not wanting to curl up on the ends. I definitely like honeycomb best, both regular honeycomb and then this is surface honeycomb. I also really like the diamond stitch I did a bit of on this one. This was much more exploring different stitches. There's a whole lot more variations in this book alone, but I feel like this was a good intro to English smocking for me. So that means it is time to move on. Next! Welcome back, we've moved on. Direct smocking. So as far as I can tell, this is the same as English smocking, only you don't use any of these threads. Why did I save them? I think they'll come back in for another one. But this is like, instead of making the grid and then doing the gathering threads and then doing the decorative stitches and then removing the gathering threads, this one, you make the grid and then you just use the decorative stitches. You're saving a step. It begs the question, if you could have just done this in the first place, what was the point of the gathering stitches? I'm assuming you kind of get neater, tighter, smaller pleats by actually doing the pleats first. But who am I to say? I know nothing about this. This says that direct smocking is not elastic like English smocking is. Once again, my brain is not quite grasping? Woo, words. Once again, my brain is not quite grasping why. Let's drink more water. Okay, let's try this. Okay, good morning. Direct smocking. It's definitely faster than the English smocking just because you are leaving out that step of gathering everything together. Hello, Trotty Paws. However, it also just looks completely different, which is cool because it looks different in a cool way. So I found that I had to be a little more precise with the stitching because, you know, I had to make sure that I was getting the dots correctly. But because it's just sort of a more flat piece of fabric in your hand, it was a little easier to hold on to. But like this is honeycomb stitching or honeycomb smocking, and this is also honeycomb smocking, but in the English style, and they look entirely different. I think because on the direct smocking, you get this fold in the center of the diamond that comes to the surface rather than being set downward like it is on the other one. I don't know. I mean, I do know. That's what it is. But yeah, you get this triangle pattern instead of the diamond pattern, and I really like it. It's just completely different. But this I could really see as, ooh, the top of a thing with skirt. It also helps that it's nice and flat. It's not inch thick pleats like the other one. This one I did with diamond smocking, which again, this is diamond smocking, and also this is diamond smocking, but in the English style. And again, they look completely different. Like you can see how they are the same thing, but doing it on the existing set pleats versus doing it on a flat piece of fabric just really alters what the final product looks like. I had to very much trust the process as I was sewing this one, because yeah, it looked wonky for a long time. Yeah, really enjoyed those. Direct smocking, cool. We are moving on, because we still have 2 more to go. So what I noticed when I did look up smocking on the interwebs was that English smocking with the decorative stitching, and I guess direct smocking as well, is much more of a classic look. You tend to see it a lot more on kids' clothing, though not exclusively, of course. It's sort of the old school style of smocking. It has a very traditional and classic appearance, whereas North American smocking, or I believe some people were just calling it Canadian smocking, looks like what we're into now kind of thing. Like this seems like the more contemporary interest in smocking. No decorative stitches, just the fabric manipulation. What's funny is that North American smocking is basically just the backside of English smocking. Or the backside of direct smocking, it's the backside of both of those. Like if I stretched out my honeycomb direct smocking, you can see what is the lozenge pattern, I believe, in North American smocking. I think the cool thing is that you're not supposed to see any stitching, so it just looks like the fabric is kind of magically forming these really interesting shapes. This is what I saved all of this thread for, because you don't want decorative thread. You want a nice sturdy thread that you're not really gonna notice. So I'll be using that. But yeah, once again, we just gotta draw some grids first. So give me about an hour. Not that long, I've gotten faster. Well, that took me 40 minutes because I decided to get all creative with my fabric choices, and it was way harder to draw the dots visibly. On to stitching. Starting right on the edge of my fabric probably wasn't the most helpful thing to do, but the instructions for this style were super clear and I got into the stitching rhythm right away. Look at that, it's already starting to look like something. I did also realize that since you're stitching on the back of the fabric, if you come up on dot 1, you're leaving the knot on the front of the fabric. So I shall fix that on the next 20 or so rows. This is the lattice pattern, and first of all, let's note that this North American method also creates a slightly elasticated final piece. Some of this looks really good, or like it's supposed to, but I'm not really sure what causes some areas to not want to fold properly. At first, I thought I had just done some of the stitches wrong, like I had caught the wrong dot in the grid or something, but I carried on being extra careful and still got some of the little weirdness. So then I thought maybe it was the points that I didn't pull tight enough? I'm not sure though. If you know anything about smocking, feel free to advise. The lozenge pattern is super cool looking and quite easy. Didn't have any weird possible mistake bits on this one. But yeah, it's so nice in this satiny material, and look how neat the back is. Of course, you'd want to do this in a matching thread for the real thing, and I could probably do smaller pickup stitches too. I am notorious for my giant pickup stitches. Notorious, I say! Hardest part of this one was just trying to see my dots on this dark fabric. So we are switching to a bright and floral one for the flower pattern because it seemed fitting. I also did this grid an inch apart instead of half an inch because I figured big flowers would be fun. This is another sort of trust the process one, just because it can look really different afterwards depending on which parts you pull forward or push back. If you leave all the middle bits pushed to the back, it actually has this sort of puffy quilted look to it. Very neat, but not really reminiscent of a flower. Then you can start pushing those in-between areas forward and you get a kind of pinwheel seeming thing. I think you'd need to do the variation where the gathered bits are more separated in order for it to really look flower-like. Okay, North American smocking is super cool. Not sure if I'd say it's my favorite of what I've tried so far, but kinda's my favorite. I just love playing around with the fabric like that, and it's kind of magical. I don't know, I think when I can see the decorative stitching, my brain is more like, yeah, okay, this is pretty and logical. And when you can't see the stitching, I mean, you can kind of, because I don't make small stitches, but you can barely see the stitching. It's just kind of like, how is the fabric doing that? Ooh. The lozenge pattern is actually my favorite, but that might just be because of the fabric that I put it on. I don't know, it's very clean, and I like the way that the folds fall on this material. I really like the lattice one, but I don't know what I was doing wrong to get these sort of like weird bloopy spots. And it'd be a really interesting thing to just fiddle around with on your own as well, like rather than just following a pattern, just make a grid and come up with some new direction of stitching on it and see what it ends up looking like on the other side. It would be a cool thing to experiment more with rather than just explore what already exists. But not right now, because we have one more. Alrighty, y'all, last smocking style, I assume. It's the last one she mentions in this book, Italian smocking. This one is slightly intimidating if you just look at the patterns in the book. I fully understand it, but the patterns are all like really intricate. It kind of reminds me of sashiko patterns, but then like if you pulled on them at the end. So we've got two types or processes here, contoured and shirred. Contoured smocking, Italian, contoured smocking, comma, Italian, is you're doing stitches across like this that you'll eventually pull to bring the fabric together. But instead of just going straight across with all of them, some of them you go down and across and up and like this. And so you get like a shifting of your pleats, a puckering of the fabric that makes it interesting. The shirred Italian smocking style is you're going across like this, but you skip some sections. So you can basically create like raised, puffy motifs, designs throughout your shirring because you've left them open it's an area that's not being gathered, so then when everything around it is gathered, it's gonna poof out from the front. I of course wanna try one of each. It's so much grid making though. So here's my thought. I think I'm gonna do a grid, like draw a grid on like I've been doing for the shirred one, but for the contoured one, I wanna try just using gingham so that instead of having to mark on a grid, I have a grid. That means I just need to draw one more grid. Huzzah! I'm starting with the shirred version and I decided to do a 1/4 inch grid. So yeah, that took forever. Looking forward to that gingham. As predicted, it is very sashiko-like in feel while stitching. Once again, using a sturdy but not decorative thread because it shouldn't be showing in the end. And then it's just up and down in rows across the fabric, picking up the dots in the proper pattern. Does require some focus to make sure you're getting the pattern right. And now for the satisfying gathering. Okay, the kind of satisfying gathering. Well, maybe not so satisfying, but super cool! I've gotta go steam this one flat, but you can imagine something like this as a fancy floofy cuff on a billowy white shirt. And using the gingham was absolutely a smart idea. Highly recommend if you just want to practice some smocking and don't want to have to draw a grid. But it was especially good for this contoured method because unlike the shirring method where you're picking up the dots, for this one you're actually doing even size stitches, one on the front, one on the back. More satisfying pulling. Decided not to try doing it all in one go this time since the book does say to do 2 at a time. I'ma do 4 at a time, but close enough. Again, a very cool look, although I suddenly got very confused about which side of the shirred version is actually the front. I think it's supposed to be the one where you can see the threads, but doesn't the other side look so much better? Observe. Cuff. Anyway, the contoured version is so fascinating too, especially with the gathered gingham making stripes like this. Oh y'all, we're getting crazy wind again. I enjoyed Italian smocking way more than I thought I would, and it did require more focus, I guess, than any other of the other styles, almost like in the same way that counted cross stitch would. I was sitting on the couch counting while Matt was trying to watch videos, and I was just over there going 3, 1, skip 3, 3, 2, skip 3, 3, 1. I'm sure he enjoyed it. I will note that this technique has absolutely no stretch because you are gathering all of your pleats together and then you're leaving those gathering stitches in. So I'd be interested to try this on like a larger grid or maybe a more like uneven grid. I don't know, I'd be interested to try this in different ways because both of these ended up a lot of very small and tight pleats, which looks awesome, but think of how much fabric you would need to do something with this style. Even just, you know, when I was like, oh, it'll be a cute cuff, that's not quite half. So you would need more than double this amount to make a cuff on my wrist. And also because it's not stretchy, it would have to be an open cuff of some kind with like a button closure or something. Anyway, you'd need a lot. Like, imagine trying to do that on a shirt. This was already a decently long piece of fabric. You would need an insanely long piece of fabric, and then you still have to do all the gathering with one thread all the way across. I mean, I suppose you could do it in sections. It could get intense if you wanted to actually make a thing with Italian smocking, but maybe on a larger grid. It would be easier or better or quicker. Who's to say? You might be able to say, have any of you ever tried any of these various styles of smocking? Any of the four? Is there a kind of smocking that is not in this book that I didn't try because it wasn't in the book? I do really like my 10 samples here, and I'm glad I did them on different fabrics. I mean, the thing is, I did 10 different variations of smocking, and there's still so many more that you could do. Like, in the North American smocking world, there are so many different patterns that I saw online. There are more patterns just in the book. In all of these, at the end of each section, she notes all of these different variations that you can do of like changing your grid, doing an uneven grid or a grid that gets smaller or gets bigger as you go. I don't know, there's just so many more things you could do. And despite having just done 10, I am tempted to keep experimenting and exploring. But no, I'm not over it, not at all. In fact, my brain is on fire with all sorts of ideas. A dress with honeycomb smocking, a shirt with lozenge smocking in the front, a big billowy blouse with the Italian smocking on the cuffs and maybe English smocking around the collar. There's a lot of stuff that I would like to try, but there's also a lot more that goes into making a smocked garment than just the stitching. Basically, completing this exploration, this project, is just adding more projects to the list, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Now I know how to smock. Someday soon, I shall smock again. But just like, don't hold your breath for it or anything, because you'll pass out. Are you still hearing me? Ooh, phone. Hello. Life is concerning. Hello? Where are you hiding? But between the drinks and subtle things. But looking at her, I'm sorry. Bless you. Let's go. No, I hate the word let's go.